All right, we're here with Steve Adler. Thanks a lot for catching up with us here, Steve. I know that we've been having some schedule conflicts, so we appreciate you coming on here today.
Of course, Jason. It's all my fault. Obviously, they haven't been your conflicts, but that's just that's me being a diva trying to manipulate the schedule. I appreciate you accommodating yourself.
Well, we've bounced you around too. Like we always like to say on the show, we do this for fun. We all have jobs, and of course those come first. But what I'd like to start with is, what's your overall impression of the 2015 Padres? You know, much different from last year's Padres, but so far, what's your overall feeling about the Padres this year?
Well, I'm disappointed. I mean, I know a lot of fans are going to sit here and go, well, you know, they're 500, they had a tough first half. Yeah, I get that. You have to beat teams that are good. You have to beat teams that are winning teams. If you can't beat teams that are winning teams, then your team clearly is just not very good. So I'm disappointed. You have to at least play 500 baseball against teams that win. So when you're playing the Nationals and the Dodgers and the Giants, and granted they have played well against the Giants, but when you play teams with a winning record, you have to at least play 500 baseball and then pick up on the teams that are crap, on the Diamondbacks, on the Rockies, on the Reds, as they have. But you just have to play better against good teams. There are times where, when you look at this team, you know, let's not kid ourselves. This team has so much talent on it. So much talent, whether it be the pitching staff, which is absolutely amazing. The bullpen is very secure, and you look at the all-stars on it, like Kimbrel and Ross and Shields. Then you look at the lineup, and it's got Upton, and they've got Kemp, and you have Myers, and you have Alonso hitting out of his mind right now.
Right.
You have to think, if I told you that the Padres have all this talent, oh, by the way, and Alonso's hitting 370, and Derek Norris is hitting far beyond what you ever thought he would,
right,
or anybody could ever think he would at this point. Now, granted, he's had a rough couple of days. Clearly, he's being overused right now. But if I told you you had all this talent and the best you were going to do by June 8th, June 9th, June 10th was a 500 baseball team, you'd be like, whoa, time out. Because this team is extremely talented. They should be considerably better than 500. So when you ask me my thoughts on them, I'm disappointed. This team should be 5 games above 500. There are clearly games in the month of April that were mismanaged. There has been mismanagement and issues to the roster, and we've seen that from Bud over the last 9 years. It's not a big surprise. You just kind of hope that he gets better. But there are times where this team will win in spite of bad management and bad lineups and bad decisions. So I would like to see them improve. We'll find out what happens. They do have a very reasonable schedule in the month of June. I know that some of the homers and some of the pom-pom fans and media people in San Diego are expecting this amazing month, and hopefully it happens. But right now, I mean, this team is just so finicky. You're not sure what team you're going to see, if they're going to score 13 runs on Saturday and then get shut out for the 10th time this season on a Sunday. So we'll find out, but I am disappointed with the performance thus far.
Now, you mentioned mismanagement. Are you on board with there's a lot of people out there that are really, really anti-Bud Black and think that the Padres need to move on from Bud Black. I know you said that maybe he's going to get better, or maybe it's going to get better in your opinion. Are you on board with that? Do you think that the Padres should be looking in a different direction, or do you want to wait and see what happens?
Well, Jason, I've been on the Bud Black is not the right guy for this team for quite a long time. And Buddy is a great guy, and he's fantastic at politics. And that's why he still has this job. Go in any other major media market, and yes, San Diego, I know we call it a small market, but realistically from a major media standpoint, it's a big market. But go into any other city and tell me that a manager can manage a team for 8 years and never make the playoffs and still have a job. How does that even happen? I don't care about the talent. How does that even happen? How do you go 8 years and never develop one hitter? There's been no hitting that's developed under Bud Black. And, we see what's happening with Austin Hedges right now. If you look around the league, Jace Peterson performing fantastic. Bud wouldn't even play him last year. Cameron Maven is almost hitting 300. I hate Cameron Maven. I think he's a piece of crap as a person. But he can ball, and he's an athlete. He's hitting almost 300 for the Braves. Logan Forsythe is hitting over 300 right now for the Rays. And there's one other guy that's escaping me. So, the guy I probably dislike him more than Cameron Maven. Yasmani Grandal is crushing right now for the Dodgers. So if you look at a guy like Bud Black and say, well, he hasn't developed any hitters, the argument was always, well, the talent's not there for him to develop. Well, really? Is it not? Because these 4 guys all left, and they're all crushing right now. So is it a Bud Black problem? Is it a player problem or personnel problem? So, it really comes down to, if you're a manager, I realize you're not accountable for everything. You can't control everything, but you're the manager. You do need to be accountable for the overall performance of the team. And only having 2 winning seasons over 8 and never making the playoffs is a huge issue. So we can talk about lack of player development. We can talk about the issues in the clubhouse. I know that the media likes to paint it off as, well, everybody loves the clubhouse. Well, guess what? Everybody loved the locker room when North Turner was there, too. Everybody loves an easy boss. And Buddy's so concerned with being everybody's friend that there is zero accountability. When you have Money Grandal and Cameron Maven running the clubhouse, that's a huge issue. And when media guys that are local ignore it and act like everything's fine when the team hasn't made the playoffs since Bruce Bochy was here, that's an even bigger issue. So, because there's no accountability for Bud Black at all from the fans. Well, I tell you, the fans are starting to get a little rowdy, but it hasn't been that way for a long time. So I think I can tell you right now, the team definitely needs a different direction. It needs a different culture. And that's, sometimes I will equate it to, if you ever remember the Peanuts movies, and I'm sure everybody kind of remembers the Christmas movie, the Halloween movie, those kind of things. But when they talk to adults, and all you hear is wah, 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 right. That's what it's like in the Padre clubhouse. And if you get an opportunity to talk to guys and have them open up, that have been in the system, that have been up, that are with other teams right now, they will tell you that nobody listens in there. It is a country club. Houston Street had a parting shot when he left, and he said there's issues in the clubhouse. Uh-huh. People tried to dust it under the rug real quick. You want to know what the issue was in the clubhouse? It was Houston Street. I had been in that clubhouse before, and the guy would show up late. Nobody would say a damn thing to him. So, when you have leaders that don't lead, that's a huge issue. So, and it is a culture issue. They do need to change that. I do think the team wins in spite of him at times. You also have a lot of guys who are young, and they're going to work hard, so they win a lot of games in September against teams that it really doesn't matter. So, we'll see. I think Buddy's on board for the rest of the season, though, at this point. I think you're going to hear a lot of, they owe it to him to keep him the rest of the way, and that kind of talk, like we've heard with North Turner. It's, he's been here so long. He hasn't done a damn thing here. I don't know. I think they owe me and you and people who have had to sit through this for 8 years a lot more than they owe a guy like Bud Black, who they probably paid close to $10 million for. I think he's fine. But the rest of us who've been buying season tickets and buying shirts and buying hats and whatever else, they owe us. They owe us a playoff berth at some point. They're going to have to do something about it, because otherwise things will happen here in the next 7 or so weeks if this team doesn't get it in gear quick.
Wow, we're talking to Steve Adler, owner, head honcho at friarhood.com. Let me tell you, Steve, that I love the fact that you have brought a completely different perspective on Bud Black, because the 4 of us here at the San Diego Sports Junkies, we're all really big Bud Black fans, and it's kind of my opinion that people pick apart the way he manages the game because they don't like him, and so they go out and they point out the things anytime something doesn't work. But I'll tell you what, nobody's raised to us some of the concerns that you have. So I love the fact that you're bringing a completely different perspective than most people who listen to us get, because
well, Jason, you can't pick apart a game every time,
right?
Because every manager makes bad decisions. It just happens. There's times where he'll make a good decision. Yeah, I think a great example of this is when he brought in Kimbrel against the Angels, and then he walks Trout and gets to Pujols, and you go, what do you do at that point? Well, people want to pick apart that decision. But if he throws to Trout and Trout hits a 3-run bomb, then what?
Yes.
So there are those decisions where you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. Now, can we talk about the way that Bud puts together a lineup and how frustrating it is for hitters and the inconsistency? Yeah, we can talk about that. I've talked to players about it myself. I understand their frustrations, and I can tell you them. Can we talk about the bullpen and how nerve-wracking it is for a guy, whether it be Quackenbush or Brad Brock or Nick Vincent or Brad Boxberger, to be able to know if they go into a game and they give up a run, then they're going to be down in AAA the next day. Is it nerve-wracking? Is it hard to be able to do your job when you have that going over your head all the time? Absolutely. Are those issues that are internal Bud Black issues? No doubt. But when you talk about game management, there's so many. I watched that. Don Mattingly is terrible. Don Mattingly is an idiot. The guy can't manage a damn thing, but he gets a $150, a $200, a $270 million payroll. Well, of course you're going to win.
Right.
If you get Bud Black the Dodgers, he'd win 100 games because he's significantly smarter than Don Mattingly. He doesn't make so many bonehead decisions. Don Mattingly just gets to roll out Clayton Kershaw every 5 days and go, oh, just win. You know, when you can do those things, and when you have guys like Adrian Gonzalez and Puig pick up for your slack, it does make it a lot easier. So I think it's different. And you also have a lot of Padre fans right now that are watching the games a lot closer than they have in years past. So little things make a huge difference. And it's also, you know, like Will Middlebrooks, I think, is a great example. You know, he's a guy who not in Chicago, in Boston, he had a great rookie year. They thought he was the next coming. Look at this guy. He's going to be, you know, Wade Boggs, except he's going to hit for power and blah, blah, blah. And he just wasn't there. My understanding with Middlebrooks is he's a great dude, as of course most of the Padre guys are.
Uh-huh.
But he's a great dude, but he's a little fragile, and you've got to handle him a certain type of way. Well, Buddy is not that guy who's going to handle a fragile guy. He's going to say, oh, you're not hitting for 2 weeks? Cool, sit the bench. I'm going to play Solarte. I don't care how many errors you make. And for a guy like Middlebrooks, that gets in his head. So it took some time for Buddy to trust Middlebrooks again, and now we see what Middlebrooks can really do. Is he going to hit like this for the rest of the way? No, he's not going to. But that's okay. If Middlebrooks can hit 250, hit 15 to 20 bombs, drive in 70 RBIs, and play fantastic defense, that's all you're going to get out of Middlebrooks. What did you get for him?
Right.
Nothing.
Who wouldn't take
you
that?
You gave the catcher from Tampa Bay.
Right.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Those are fantastic numbers. And his defense is the best in the field. I realize he's had some sketch plays. I know, like last night, ball went off his glove at third base, but he also made 2 great one-handed grabs. He's the only plus defender in position right now on that defense, so which is a little scary. But that's the truth of it. And, you know, we can talk about defense and kind of little things that they can tweak to be able to improve. Whether or not they'll tweak them, we'll find out here. But Bud Black's going to have a full stable in a couple days with Will Myers coming back, and things are going to get really interesting.
Well, I'm happy you brought that up because that's next. We have both the Upton brothers. We have Matt Kemp. We have Will Myers. We have Will Venable, who, you know, Will Venable usually gives us a 2 or 3 week streak every season that makes us think that he's ready to be an everyday outfielder. Of those 5 guys, who's your starting 3 outfielders?
Well, I think you have to roll with Kemp, Upton, and Myers, and then you use Venable and the other Upton and Melvin as your defensive guys. You just have to do that. Now the nice thing is you can start to platoon Kemp a little bit. And I don't say that because Kemp's been struggling with the bat, although on this road trip he's been great. Let's keep in mind, Matt Kemp is owed a ton of money, and his knees are not what they used to be. So if you can start giving him a couple days off here and there, because assuming that you're in the race, you want him to have his legs under him in August and September. Well, if you keep rolling him out there every day, then he's just not going to be that guy you want him to be. So hopefully you can start using Venable in center, Myers in right, Upton in center, Myers in right, Venable in right, Upton in center. You know, you can do some things like that. Against a hard-throwing lefty, you can play Myers at first. I love the way Myers played first. Obviously, he's very green there, but you can sense. I was in. I live in Arizona, so I was at all the games when he was at first base, and he is so athletic. He is so fluid. You would think he's been there for a while. He just doesn't know where to go all the time because Solarte is like that too. Solarte is a hot mess at first base. It's just like a circus act. So, but the thing is Myers is so athletic, he picks it up really easy, and he's got good range, good footwork, uses his hands well. You know, it's a little different. You know, Alonso's like having a piano at first base. You know, it's one step either way. You know, it's like Kuz. You know, we all love Kuz.
Right.
But Kuz was like one step either way. He'd make that play, but anything outside of that, this wasn't going to happen.
Right.
So when you look at a guy like Myers, it'll be interesting, and I think the clubhouse dynamic is going to be even more interesting because Melvin Upton historically is a guy who tends to be an issue in the clubhouse. Now I got a chance to talk with Melvin a little bit when I was in El Paso last week, and I don't want to say we hung out because we didn't, but you know we talked for about 5 minutes a few times, and he seems like a good dude. But my understanding is he gets moody. And we'll find out if that's an issue. Obviously, his brother's in the clubhouse, too. You know, the rumors when they were in Atlanta, and we've heard how much Melvin's gotten booed in Atlanta. You know, the rumors were that he was a huge clubhouse cancer. Anytime he doesn't play, he has an issue with that. You know, we'll find out because Buddy doesn't really do well with those things. You remember when Orlando Hudson was in San Diego? He was a clubhouse cancer. Everybody tried to act like he wasn't, and everybody was all good. But no, he was just, pinpointing all over the place, and everybody thought it was fine. It was not fine. It was a huge issue. We don't want Melvin Upton to be like that. And, the nice thing is you do have guys like James Shields. You have guys like Matt Kemp, Craig Kimbrell, who can step in and go, bro. That's not how we're doing it here.
Right.
But for the most part, it'll be interesting to see that dynamic because all of a sudden you need to get these guys to play. And not only play, not like Little League where everybody needs to play like we've seen for a while, but we need these guys to perform. So Melvin has to be able to suck it up and go, I might only start 3 games out of 7. At the same time, when he wants to play center field, nobody is going to play center field anywhere near him. Venable is a respectable center fielder. He's worked very hard on it. He's a very good right fielder. No one can play center field like Melvin Upton if Melvin wants to play center field. And that's all going to come down to Bud Black. So as soon as I see Melvin Cadillac something in center field, and we don't see Bud Black do anything about it, Melvin will continue to do whatever he wants. Because at that point, Bud Black is not holding people accountable, which is an issue that we have seen in the past with guys like Orlando Hudson and Cameron Maven.
Right. Now, us in San Diego, of course, we're all hoping that Melvin Upton comes here and he has a resurgence because they signed him in Atlanta to that big contract because they knew his abilities. So we're hoping that that Melvin Upton really, really turns it around. And what I'm wondering is next season, of course, Melvin Upton's going to be a Padre. We have that big contract. But Justin Upton is not under contract from next season. Any chance that the Padres re-sign Justin Upton, or do you think he's gone next year?
Well, there's always a chance, right?
Well, yeah,
always a chance. Okay, so let me preface this by saying I have a huge bromance on with Justin Upton. The guy is absolutely amazing. He reminds me of Gary Sheffield, and I loved Gary Sheffield when he was a Padre.
Yes,
just absolutely fantastic. His bat speed is phenomenal. You have not seen a player hit like Justin Upton in a Padre uniform at Petco Park since Petco Park was built.
Yes, that's true.
And so when I look at it, he holds a lot more value to the Padres than he would to other teams because of the fact that it's so hard for them to find an asset like that. So when you look at it from a business standpoint, you go, well, and I think Seth Smith was a guy that you kind of look at and go, this guy can actually hit in Petco Park. It's so different. But when you can find guys who will hit in that park, they have, I don't want to say exponential value, but they have considerably more value to you than they should another guy. Than should another, like Pablo Sandoval. It's like, oh, they went after Pablo. No, who cares? Pablo has great postseasons, but he's not a great player.
Right.
He doesn't bring a lot of value except the fact that he can play in the postseason, and if we don't make the postseason, it doesn't matter. Justin Upton is a guy who makes Petco Park look small. So when you look at the big scheme of things and say, if you're going to pay $200 million to one guy, who's that guy going to be? Who fits? Would it be Bryce Harper? Would it be Mike Trout? Would it be Giancarlo Stanton? Okay, well, none of these guys are going to be available. We have an opportunity to get a guy like Justin Upton, who not only do we think can hit in Petco Park, but we now know that he can hit in Petco. And keep this in mind, Petco plays a lot more hitter-friendly the second half of the season because there's less marine layer. It dries up, the ball flies better. Now, we've seen the balls flying better earlier in the season right now, which is very odd. But if we know he can hit in Petco in April and May, that is amazing value if you're the general manager. Now, how do you afford Justin Upton? Does that mean you're trying to jump Kemp the deadline? Does that mean you're trying to move Shields? Does that mean, what does that mean? If the team's in the race, then you're just kind of going for broke. But, that was a trade that cost the Padres a lot. We see Peterson doing well. Malik Smith is killing it at Double-A. Peterson, the third baseman they traded as well, is killing it at Single-A. They also got Max Fried in that deal, the Padres' #1 former pick. I believe it's 9th overall. He's still recovering from Tommy John. But he's a guy who was compared to Clayton Kershaw coming into the draft. So, they gave up a ton for 1 year of Justin Upton. So keep that in mind. They traded 6 years of value of each 4 of those guys for 1 year of Justin Upton and maybe a compensation pick, because obviously they'll make a qualifying offer.
Right.
So you look at a guy like that and say, we really need to get this guy because, A, he can hit in Petco, and B, how frustrating is it going to be for our fan base when Jace Peterson continues to start every single day for the Atlanta Braves. When Malik Smith comes up, God forbid Malik Smith ends up being Kenny Lofton in center field. Yeah, which he could be. He could be Luis Durango. We'll find out. Peterson is going to be a baller for the Braves. And, if Max Fried, he's got the most upside of anybody. But if he ends up being a nice lefty, you don't have to be Clayton Kershaw to be a good lefty. If you can be a number 3 in a rotation, you're an $8 to $10 million lefty. So you kind of look at that and go, oof, it's going to be really hard for Padres fans to swallow if they just traded all this value for 6 months of Justin Upton and a compensation pick. So we'll see how it goes, but I would love to see them have him. I am very biased. You can send off anybody you want on that team if you keep Justin Upton. That's how much I love the guy. So I would. He is one of those few guys in baseball that you say, I'm going to buy a ticket just to see this. Like if you're going to take a kid, like if you had a kid, he's 7 or 8 years old, and you want him to go to a baseball game, there's a handful of guys like Andrew McCutchen and Mike Trout, Paul Goldschmidt. Justin Upton is one of those guys. And not only that, he makes games at Petco exciting. Because for the last how many years that they've been in Petco, you kind of sit there, they go down 2-0, and you go, well, we'll see how it goes. You know that at any point, if Justin Upton comes to bat, you have to stop what you're doing and watch the game.
And how long has it been since the Padres had somebody like that?
In Petco Park, ever.
Yeah.
I mean, Adrian didn't hit in Petco.
No.
Adrian was terrible in Petco because he'd always go oppo and it would die in left field at the warning track. So when you look at Petco, there's just not a guy like that. He is so rare and unique in that form. So, would I pay him $200 million? I think what you do is you have to get creative. And you put together a $200 million contract for him and say, hey, we're going to pay you $25 million a year. It's an 8-year deal, but you can opt out after the first 3. And the way you set it up is you basically pay him $20 to $22 million for the first 3 years, and then you backload it. So if he opts out, then you're good.
Right.
So you got him for 3 years. So you had a 4-year deal. Now, granted, this has no effect on the trade because keep in mind, you traded for 6 months of Justin Upton. That's all you traded for.
Yep.
So this is additional on top of it. But if you do something creative like that where he says, hey, I've got my money,
at least the Padres are going to try. They didn't just, with what they gave up, they're not going to just take him and let him go. They're going to make a serious effort to keep him here. And you're right.
Trust me, it's wishful thinking, Jason. Because normally I have a really good read on the GMs, and I've known most of the GMs that have been with the Padres. And when I say known, I've gotten a chance to know them via conversations or I don't know A.J. Preller at all. And I don't think anybody does, even people who have access to him, know what's going on in his head. I am being ambitious, and we'll find out. I'll have a much better idea in terms of how things could go after the deadline. Because if they shed some payroll, then you kind of think, well, they shed some payroll, now they can pay Justin Upton. But if they don't shed payroll and they go into 2016 with Shields' contract and Kimbrel and Kemp and a raise for a bunch of the other guys because they're arbitration eligible, oof. All of a sudden, Tyson Roth's going to be in his 3rd year of arbitration. You've got Cashner in his final year of arbitration. The payroll can get pretty steep, and there's definitely no way they can afford Justin Upton if that's the case.
Now, we had talked about Will Myers earlier. I know that, last week you said you were down in El Paso checking out. Did you get a chance to see Will Myers play last week, or was he not down there at the time you were down there?
He wasn't down there yet. Alonso was down there for 1 game. And Melvin was up there for every game I was down there. Myers showed up when they were in Vegas, so I left on Thursday. I think he showed up on Sunday, so I missed him.
Oh, you missed him.
Alonso was terrible when he was there.
I heard that.
Absolutely. It just looked like he didn't want to be there because he wasn't even supposed to be there Monday. I show up, and I see Alonso in the lineup, and a bunch of guys were like literally in the clubhouse, why is Alonso in the lineup? Why is he even here?
Yeah. Because
they were all under the impression that he was supposed to be gone. Well, then he comes up and he basically Cadillacs a couple balls at first base, just swung at 3 straight pitches his first at-bat. He hit a ball very Alonso-like just over the shortstop's head to left center, and then he went down 3 strikes swinging again. So you're just kind of like, the guy just doesn't want to be here. And then he comes up and he's hitting .455 in his first 6 games with the Padres. So, he turned it on when he wanted to. But, and I don't, I've never been an Alonso fan because I think he's he hits like a second baseman. It's a very light-hitting second baseman.
Yeah.
And I think from first base, you really need a guy who can put up some slugging, drive and run. And he doesn't hit like that. So it's haven't been a huge fan, but you can't knock the fact that he's hitting I think he's hitting 360 right now.
Yeah.
You just can't knock. Because as much as I want to beat up his lack of extra base hits, if you're hitting 360, even if you hit 330, okay, even if you hit 310,
yeah,
I have no room to stand. Even if it's all single, you still hit 310. Just ideally, you put a guy like that where he hits second, so that way he's getting on base for guys like Upton and Kemp. He's not hitting sixth, where it's now his responsibility to try to drive guys in. Let him go. Let him get on base. Let him do his thing. And especially if he's doing that, Myers or whoever's leading off can get on first, steal second base. Alonso gets a squeaker, and all of a sudden you got to run. You're up 1-0 because he's hitting 330. So you put him sixth, and it changes everything. It's a completely different dynamic.
Yeah, we always said, they always talk about how he's a doubles hitter and stuff. Say, well, you better hit 300, and then you better give us some goddamn doubles. The last couple of years, we haven't,
he hasn't been a doubles hitter.
No, he hasn't been a nothing hitter. So
he
it's
lost
nice
15 pounds and became skinny Cuban.
Yeah,
nope.
it's been nice to see us get some production out of him this season. It really has.
It is. And granted, it's only been 120 at-bats, so I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves. I am definitely eating crow. And, there was a lot of talk this offseason that the Padres were going to non-tender him.
Yeah.
And he wasn't even going to be on the team, but they didn't have any lefties, and they needed balance in the lineup, so he survived. And now, obviously, he's hitting well, but I'm not going to get too excited. It's only been 120 at-bats. For people who have stood by, I think Jeremy Nash is one of those guys who stood by Alonso because he loves the guy. Congratulations, he's hitting well. But, let's get to 300 at-bats. Let's get to 400 at-bats. That's when you really start to know. And if the guy's still hitting over 300, then I've got to eat some crow.
Yeah.
Because I don't think he's that guy. I think he's a 260 to 270 singles hitter. And as a first baseman, that doesn't fly.
That does not fly. You're right about that. Now, real quickly, back to Myers. He is going to be coming back. When he does come back, what are the chances that the Padres say send someone like Alexi Amarista down to the farm? Do you think that that's a possibility? And if not him, who goes down?
Well, you're probably going to look at one of the pitchers, which would be more than likely Quackenbush.
Yeah.
So, it's you kind of look at it. We had this little discussion. Realistically, I'd love to see Austin Hedges down in AAA right now. You got your top prospect, and you're sitting on the bench rotting away.
Yeah.
I'd like to see him down and have them call up Rocky Gale. Clearly, Rocky Gale's not going to hurt the team. He won't even play. So, but having Austin Hedges play every day and hit, keep in mind he hit 225 last year in AA. So this is a kid you definitely want getting at bats. And let's not forget, right now he's going to be a Super 2 because his clock started early. So you need to get him down there to slow that clock down again so he's not a Super 2. Because otherwise, this is going to end up, this couple months is going to end up costing the team anywhere from $5 to $10 million.
Wow.
All because you needed to have Austin Hedges up here? No, it doesn't make any sense. So anyway, that's one thing. The Spangenberg-Jerko issue needs to be resolved. Jerko hit 286 in May, and Black still isn't playing him. So he needs to get out. If he can't hit, then go let him play in AAA and work out the kinks. And if he can hit, then play him. And the guy's got a ton left on his contract. So I would move one of those two guys, Jerko or Spangenberg. More than likely Spangenberg. He's been pretty hit or miss, but the problem with Spangenberg is the kid really needs to play every day. I would send him down to AAA just because his glove needs a lot of work. You see that there are sometimes, his athleticism will shock you the way he'll have range because he's so quick. But there are routine plays that he doesn't make, and it's because he's never been good with the glove. But when you have him bouncing around from second to third all the time, just let him get good at one spot. Don't let him be below average at both spots. Just let him get good at one, because he'll hit. His bat will translate if you just let him have at bats every day. Let him work on leading off, getting on base. Because one thing we've seen about Corey is he can hit, but he doesn't walk a lot. And if you're going to be a top of the order guy, you need to be patient. You need to draw walks. Let him learn that stuff down at AAA when he can play every day. He can work on working counts and whatnot, and he can work on his glove. And then when you bring him back, I don't know if it's in September. I don't know. If somebody gets hurt, and we'll find out. Those things always kind of work themselves out. But you let him go get that. So for me, if I was a general manager, which clearly I'm not, I would promote Myers, and then I'd send down Spangenberg and let Spangs go get his at bats. I think he was hitting 224 at the end of May. So I mean, he can use the at bats every day. There's no reason he'll go down to AAA and he'll hit 320 because he can hit.
Right.
So, but we'll see. It's probably going to be a pitcher though. If Black's going to be stubborn about it, and if you're not going to play Jerko, I mean, we saw Jerko play first base on Monday.
Yeah.
What the hell is that about?
Yeah, that was
so
weird.
I'm like, and then Barmas went over to first base.
Barmas was over there too. Yeah.
I'm like, what are you doing? And like the other day in Cincinnati, we saw Middlebrooks go to short, and then have a terrible play because he doesn't know how to play short. And you sit there, and I'm like, somebody's going to die. They're all going to run into each other. This is a hot mess here. Just let guys play where they play, and maybe that's a matter of Buddy just being a pitcher, not a position guy, and trying to put square pegs in round holes, or trying to make sure everybody's versatile. They don't have to be versatile. They just have to be good at one thing. And if they can be good at one thing, just let them be there and let them do their thing because baseball is a mental game. And as soon as you start messing with guys' heads, they start underperforming. And we've seen that time and time again, whether it's the Padres or not, because they're uncomfortable. Chase had a great example. Chase is a guy, and I know Chase, and I'm close with Chase. But Chase was the guy who came up and played left field and was just sitting in left field going, don't hit the ball to me. Because he felt uncomfortable in left field. You put him at first base, he's comfortable, he hit better. It's just, he hits 225 in left and he hits 255 at third because he feels more comfortable. And that's, you make a mistake in the field. A lot of guys take that to the plate. And it's not something, I guess, from our standpoint, we're fans, you're like, oh, brush it off, not a big deal, move on. It's not that easy.
Right.
Because you're kind of sitting there going, am I even going to be in the lineup tomorrow? What do I need to do? And then you got guys overswinging, overcompensating at the plate, trying to make up for an error because I don't want to be benched tomorrow. There's all these little things a lot of fans don't think about that happen during a baseball game and have a huge effect mentally on these guys. So, and part of that is the instability with the lineup and the lack of accountability.
Well, we went through the outfield, so maybe we'll do the infield here, Steve. We make Steve Adler the manager of the Padres tomorrow, and who is your starting everyday infield?
Well, based on this roster, I would start. I would go with Alonso, Jerko, Amarista, and Middlebrooks. And I don't feel comfortable saying Amarista because I actually think Barmas brings a lot more to the table, but the defense is a huge issue for the Padres right now, and I think he's just a little better than 47-year-old Clint Barmas at shortstop.
Yeah.
So that's my starting infield. It's not flashy, it's not fun, it's not sexy, that's for sure. But it's kind of the best that you've got, and so that's where I would roll at. I mean, I'm not going to play around with Solarte. Solarte and Amarista are utility guys. You need to use them in that role. Preller has got to get a real shortstop in here soon.
Yeah.
Whether it's, I think a guy like Zobrist would be fantastic. Call up Pittsburgh, see what they want with Jordy Mercer. There's a couple of guys. The Astros just called up Carlos Correa. They've got Jed Lowry. Maybe they're willing to maybe AJ Hinch will throw the Padres a bone. Send Jed Lowry over. I'm sure they could use a starting pitcher. Maybe Ian Kennedy and a prospect could do it and get Jed Lowry over here. I know they got to take on a little payroll to do that, but
right.
They've got to get a real shortstop. But once they can get a real shortstop, it'll really solidify the rest of the infield. It doesn't mean guys are going to hit, but it does mean that you're going to make more plays, and that's going to help everything. Because when you have a shortstop making plays, and I know Amarista defensive ratings-wise hasn't worked bad, he owes a lot of that to the advanced scouts and the shifting, but he doesn't have very good range, and he doesn't have a plus arm. There's a below-average shortstop. You get a guy in there who can make all the plays. You don't have to compensate so much for shifting when you have a good shortstop. So, those things will help. But, we've seen it. We've seen when, we saw Cincinnati this week. Their middle infield is really good. That Cozart is a hell of a shortstop. We see guys like Brandon Crawford and San Fran. Gosh, he's so good. I just hate the guy. So freaking good. So, you get a guy like that and you put him in shortstop, it's going to make – you put a guy in shortstop who can play good defense, and you put a guy in center field that can play great center field, it'll help a lot. And ideally, you start giving Norris a break and get somebody back there who can catch a little bit better. And it also helps out the pitcher. So, you can't, Norris isn't a great defensive catcher, and I don't think you really want to touch on that, but his bat has to be in the lineup because it's so good. that the Black is afraid to bench him, which unfortunately we're seeing circa 2010 Jorge Torrealba with Norris, how he basically burnt Torrealba to the ground because in the second half he had no legs.
That's what I'm wondering. Should we be worried about that, or should we be worried about how much Norris is playing? I know that Norris doesn't want. Everybody will say, "Oh, he doesn't want out of the lineup, and he doesn't want Bud to sit him down." But do you think that Bud maybe needs to start giving this guy a little bit of rest, or are we gonna be in a real rough second half?
His average dropped 20 points in the last week.
Yeah, he's
tired. I mean, you have got to have your legs under you, and why did you bring Austin Hedges up? Don't get me started on that again.
Yeah.
But why did you bring Austin Hedges up? He's the best defensive catcher in the system, on the team. Why are you going to bring him up and not play him at all? So, I don't know if it's a matter of saying, hey, and I think when Alonso was out, that was the opportunity where you should have said, we're going to let Norris play a day or two at first base and see how it goes.
Yeah.
But you have got to start giving that guy a break, because otherwise, if we're in the same spot, let's say on the 15th or on the 20th, you guys are doing your podcast, you look at it and you're going, dang, Norris is hitting 250 right now. What's going? He's only had 2 days off in the last couple of weeks. What's going on? And then you're going, oh, yeah, Norris maybe wasn't so good. Guess what? He got burnt out. It's just like when Black tries to use pitchers like 3 days in a row, or use them like 3 out of 4 days. And they get burnt out.
Yeah.
And it hurts. And then you're like, what the hell is that guy's problem? Why do you suck all of a sudden? He's tired. These guys do get tired. I realize. And catcher is a completely different position because it's so demanding. If you can look at a guy like Matt Kemp and go, okay, bro, how many balls were hit the right field? Seriously. How much did you really have to run? But when you're talking about a catcher, guy's on every play.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's just, you look at, and I get it. Norris is tough, and everybody loves him because he's gritty, and obviously he's hitting his ass off. So, there's that. But at a certain point, guys are going to wear down. And when if you're the manager, you have to know your guys well enough to say, I'm taking you out, and it's in your best interest that I take you out. You can fight me on it all you want, but I'm doing this because I want you to be good the next 3 games. All right, I don't want you running on fumes for a few games, and then all of a sudden, remember that grand slam he hit? It was at home like 2 weeks ago on a walk-off. I think it was in the 10th inning.
Yep.
He was 0 for 4 that night with 4 strikeouts.
4 strikeouts. Yep.
Yeah, he got a hold of the hanger. And that happens, and that's what good hitters do. We haven't seen that in the past because we have hitters, and they get so nervous they can't mistake. But when you see a guy like that, all of a sudden you forget that Norris wasn't hitting because he hit a walk-off. And that home run saved Bud Black for at least another couple days because they were spiraling at that point.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden Norris hits a grand slam, and everybody's fired up, and everybody's like, yay, see, Bud's great. So, those things happen, and that's okay. And when you have good players, they make good plays. But you got a guy like Norris, you're going to have to give him a rest 1 or 2 days a week. Even Yadier Molina takes a break once in a while.
Right.
You got to give those guys a break.
All right,
Jason, I'm sorry. I mean up your entire podcast.
I love it. Hey, man, I love it.
So if you want to save some of this and throw it on and hide it on your website for a while, I get it.
We're gonna play it on the show. We're gonna bring you back next, probably during the second half of the season. I love it. I love everything. I be honest with you, don't agree with everything you're saying, but I love it. I love the way you approach. I love the way you look at it, and I'm gonna put you on the spot a little bit because I'm not sure if you know about either one of these guys, but I'm gonna ask you. A lot of people are asking us. Any word on Josh Johnson or Corey Lubke? Have you heard anything about either one of those guys?
Yeah, Johnson's in rehab. That sounds terrible. Let me rephrase that.
Yeah, he's always there.
Johnson is rehabbing. By the way, Epic Afro. I don't know if you saw him in the clubhouse the other day. He's in Atlanta with the team. Epic Afro.
I have seen it.
It looked like if the guy from LMFAO and Robin Lopez had a baby, it would look like Josh Johnson. It was amazing. So, but Josh Johnson's rehabbing. He's still at least a month away. Corey Lubke is actually in Arizona. He's in Peoria right now. He threw last week. I believe he threw 60 pitches, no setbacks.
Good.
So, we'll see. We'll see how that goes. I will say, not that you asked about this, but Kennedy looked terrible and fought through his start on Monday, and did a fantastic job of not having good stuff and still getting through.
Who was that?
I think there's something to be said for that.
Who was that?
Ian Kennedy.
Oh.
Yeah, because Ian has struggled so much.
Yes.
He's been up and down, and this point he's been really up and down too. I realize the fans have been very finicky with those guys, and Morrow had a setback.
Yep.
He's back in San Diego for an MRI now on the shoulder. But when you look at a guy like Ian Kennedy, it's tough because he has been really frustrating. There's times he goes out and he pitches and he grinds like he did on Monday, and there's other times where he goes out and he gives up 7 runs, and you just have to leave him out there to sacrifice a 10.
Yeah.
And fans go, "Oh my gosh, this guy's ERA." Well, yeah, but they kept him out there for 6 innings to save the pen, so he gave up a couple more runs. That happened. But when you look at that rotation, they don't necessarily. It'd be good to have Josh Johnson and Corey Lukey back, but even if Lukey comes back, Lukey's not going to start.
No.
Lukey's going to come out of the pen. And granted, if you look at that 40-man, they have 3 lefties on the 40-man, and none of them are good. They've got Garces, De La Rosa, and I believe, oh my gosh, he's escaping me now. Rearick.
Yes,
Rearick is the other lefty. None of these guys are worth a 40-man spot, but they're fat that needs to be trimmed on the 40-man. Obviously, once Lukey and Johnson come back, they'll get trimmed. But none of them are any good. So when Lukey can pitch, he'll go to El Paso. He'll get a rehab or 2. He's probably going to come out of the pen, and then when he comes up, he'll come out of the pen for the Padres, and he'll be an amazing lefty out of the pen, which is what they don't have right now. So, that'll be nice. Johnson is a beast. I love Josh Johnson. I love when he was in Miami.
Yeah.
But, how many starts are we going to get out of Josh Johnson? 4? 3?
Maybe.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But if they're 4 killer starts, I'd be pumped. I'm pumped to see him in a Padre uniform. So we'll see. Hopefully that will happen at some point that's not spring training. But he's a beast, and hopefully he can bring something. And ideally, I think if you're a general manager, you really hope Josh Johnson can come back in July and put together 2 solid starts, because then it allows you to look at the rotation and go, I've got a couple pieces I can flip right here.
Right.
Whether it be Josh Johnson or Ian Kennedy or Despaigne or Cashner, which I think Cashner would be a decent piece to flip. He's one of the few guys that you could flip and go get a shortstop with.
Yeah.
So, especially because the farm is not what it was, and most of their top prospects aren't hitting worth a lick right now. So that's not helping either. So, but if Josh Johnson comes back in July, gives you a couple good starts, and you go, hey, I got Josh Johnson right here.
Exactly.
So, what do you want? Where are we at with this? Or you can say, yeah, I feel comfortable moving Kennedy or moving somebody else because Josh Johnson can give us a good couple starts. Lukey's close. Erlin is improving down at AAA. He had one bad start a couple weeks ago, but he's been doing real well. I talked to Bronswell Patrick about that. He's the pitching coordinator down in El Paso. He looks good. Jason Lane has looked pretty solid as well. So, if you need a filler, you've got a couple guys that can definitely do that.
Nice. Well, Steve, we're talking...
Now, Jason,
yes, sir.
Next time I'm on,
yes,
if I don't agree with something, you can say it. Don't be afraid to give me any pushback.
I'll tell you what, the Bud Black stuff...
I know you're being cordial, you're being a good host, but you can push me back on things. Not a problem.
I love the Bud Black. The reason why I love what you're saying about Bud Black is because we are all, me especially, I'm such a big, I really, really like Bud Black. I'm on board.
Everybody likes him. He's a great dude.
I'm on board with the people who think that he hasn't, the fact that, I keep saying, the fact that the Padres didn't lose 120 games last year tells me he's a good manager, because that was an awful team last year. And
they had a $70 million payroll. Come on.
Still an awful team. Still an awful team.
No. I would say we've seen worse teams than that, by the way.
You think so?
Keep in mind, way worse team. That team last year, when you look at the players this year, had Alonso. They had Grandal. They had Maven. Headley, who had a terrible first half of the year, but he always does. He's not necessarily a quick starter. Right. But he's a guy who he's their most reliable guy. Had Jerko, who hit 25 home runs the year before. Venables killing it this year. He was on that team. Seth Smith had a fantastic first half. The rotation was Kennedy, Cashner, Ross. I mean, they had a good, solid rotation.
Yes.
They didn't have a bad team last year. They didn't have... Now, this team, against that team, if you just go on paper, worlds apart. But they didn't have a terrible team last year. I can pick out 5 other teams. Nobody loses 120 games.
All those
you know
guys,
what I mean?
All those guys that you named just had like the worst seasons of their life, and you can blame that maybe on Bud, or maybe you can blame that on those players. I don't know.
Well, I think there's multiple people that have to be accountable for this.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's not just, sometimes it's a matter of timing, sometimes it's work ethic, sometimes it's, just the chemistry, sometimes it's a guy's playing injured and you don't know. Sometimes their grandma died and it's affecting them and nobody says anything, and you just don't know why a guy's struggling and can't focus. And that's why. Those are things that a lot of times we as fans don't hear, but they do happen. Real world happens. Maybe some guy's girlfriend dumped him and nobody knows. Right. But all of a sudden, he hasn't got a hit in 6 games. You go, what the hell, man? So, like the big joke, I'm sure you remember, when Matt Kemp was with Rihanna, he couldn't hit.
Yeah.
And then Rihanna dumped him, and he put an MVP series together. And everybody's like, oh, see what happened? And I'm not saying that was the case, but those things do happen. And, life happens for all of us. Like you said, when you kick things off. We all have jobs, we all do this. We all have lives. And if you have a terrible day, or if something happens, maybe your dog's sick, or maybe your grandma's sick, or God forbid anything happens, and you got to go to work, it's tough to expect you to perform at a very high level because you got a lot on your shoulders. And that happens with these guys sometimes.
Yeah, we do forget. We do forget that they're human. They have the same problems that we have. So.
Yeah, they're just paid like superhuman people.
All right, this is we have Steve Adler here. You can follow him on Twitter at make sure I get this right, Steve_Adler. You can also find him on friarhood.com.
You will probably unfollow me as quickly as you follow. That's okay.
And what else you got going on there, Steve?
Well, I'm going to be in town this weekend. We're having a party. I'll be at the LT 5K. We've got a booth. I also run an apparel company called America's Finest Apparel. So if you want to pick up some Chargers threads, some Padres threads, check it out, americasfinestapparel.com. I design myself, and I get a little help from a guy named Jeremy Nash, good friend of mine, great artist. He does a few of our designs as well. But we design everything on the site. Check it out. Everything is manufactured. It's all 100% ring-spun pods. It's all very high-quality stuff. So you can check it out. We're going to be at the LT5K. So if you're running, we'll actually have all the stuff there, and we'll have a big sale going on. And then on Saturday afternoon, we're going to have a pregame party. Dodgers are coming to town. Boo. Everybody hates the Dodgers. And I really hate those guys who write blogs who are really Dodger fans and act like they're Padre fans. Those guys really drive me crazy. But anyway, the Dodgers are coming to town. So we're going to have a party on Saturday at Dick's Last Resort. It should be approximately 2:30 to 4:30 kind of thing. So if anybody wants to come by, say hi, shake hands, tell me I don't know what I'm talking about, that's okay. You can come by and do that. We'll also have some shirts available at Dick's Last Resort as well. And besides that, we're just writing. There's an article I'd encourage everybody to read because I wrote it. So shameless plug. And it's a article that I wrote a week ago, and it talks about the 100-game season, about how essentially baseball, you don't celebrate the 100-game season. Most people are like, what's a 100-game season? But I'll give you a little synopsis, and then you can go on the website and read it. But the way it works is we all understand how the playoffs work. Basically, you finish 162 games, best teams move on, so forth and so on. Well, the same thing happens at approximately 100 games. At 100 games, you're either trading talent or you're trading for talent.
Right.
And if you're trading for talent, that means you're still in it, and you get to move on to the next 60. And if you're trading talent, you're basically just playing exhibition games for the next 2 months. So the first 100 games of the season are extremely crucial, especially to a fringe team like the Padres. So I wrote an article and kind of broke all that down. So if you get an opportunity, check it out. It's on friarhood.com. It should be the top story because it's not like we write anything, no. Except Alex does a fantastic job and he writes from Idaho Grande. But check it out, and it should give you some interesting insight. It's a little different angle. When I do write, I don't write often, but it's a little more philosophical, a little more analytical than just your typical, here's what happened last night at the game. I get bored with those things. Just myself. For those people who write them, congratulations. Good for you. I could not do that. It's driving me crazy. But you can check that out as well. Otherwise, follow on Twitter. And if you unfollow, I don't get offended. If you want to mute me, that's okay too. But if you talk to me on Twitter, I will talk back to you. You may not like what I have to say, but I will talk back to you.
That's great, though. I love the fact that you're so opinionated and your opinion is so strong, and whether, like I said before, whether we agree with you or not, you say what you mean and you mean what you say, and we all love it here. And I'd love to bring you on again, maybe sometime in the second half, maybe after the trading deadline, talk a little bit more Padres with you, and then maybe also during the Charger season get you on for some Charger talk too.
Oh, I'm not opinionated about Chargers at all.
Yeah,
so.
I'm sure you're not.
Well, and the reality of it is, because I run Friarhead, and I own High Voltage as well, but we don't really write too much on it. But because I spent so much time covering the Padres when I lived in San Diego and when I was on 1360, I just I'm very passionate about it. I would have told you 5 years ago when I started the website, but I was always a bigger football fan. But I love the way that baseball works, and I love the business of baseball. And it's so much different than football is. And the fans are different. The fans are completely different from baseball season to football season. And they tend to be as snobbish as they can be sometimes, and a little arrogant about numbers. They tend to be more educated fans. So it is a more enjoyable conversation, a good back and forth, as opposed to some Charger fans who are just like, he's a bum. And, that's kind of the premise of an argument. So, but when it comes to baseball and talking Padres, I follow them from the ground up. And I have for quite a while now, and invested a good chunk of my life in this team, covering them over the last 6 years of firehood. But I do have opinions. And I talk to a lot of guys, and trust me, I don't know everything. If I don't know, a lot of times I'm going to text a scout, I'm going to call a player, I'm going to call a coach, and I'm going to find out. Yeah. Well, what do you think about this guy? I don't want to say something and have it be inaccurate. What are your 2 cents on him? Help me. So a lot of times my opinions are molded by not only my thoughts on what I see, but also by other people I talk to inside and outside of the organization.
That is awesome. You
guys can talk anytime. Ideally, we'll do shorter segments, but we got the big elephant out of the room right now.
Yeah,
but you guys can have me on anytime. It's all good.
That's awesome. I appreciate it, Steve. We look forward to talking to you later on in the season.
All right, Jay, you guys have a great show. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, man.